The first time Ethan Cooper saw the alien girl, she was sitting by herself under the rusted water tower at the edge of Outpost 17, her thin hands clasped around a small, tattered book. He'd come to the frontier colony on Luma 4 for work, repairing broken harvest drones and patching irrigation systems for whatever settlers could afford him. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept him fed and let him sleep under a real roof. The alien girl, though, she didn't even have that. She was one of the Zelari, a pale-skinned, luminous-eyed species who'd been driven from their homeworld after a corporate war stripped their land bare. Now a handful of them scraped by as refugees, doing menial labor for food. Her name, he later learned, was Siri. For weeks, Ethan only saw her from a distance. She swept floors in the colony canteen, her silvery hair tied in a frayed ribbon, her back bent under the weight of exhaustion. She never spoke unless spoken to, and even then, her voice was barely more than a whisper. One evening, a storm hit Luma 4. The red dust howled through the streets like angry ghosts. Ethan had just finished sealing a generator casing when he spotted a faint figure stumbling through the wind.
Siri.
She was clutching that little book, shielding it with her body. He waved her into his workshop. She hesitated, eyes wide, unsure if she'd be welcome, but another gust made the decision for her. She darted inside. "Sit down," Ethan said, handing her a thermal blanket. "You'll freeze out there." She nodded, trembling, and accepted a steaming cup of synth coffee. Her fingers were so thin he could see the faint blue veins beneath her skin. "Thank you, human," she murmured. "You're kind." "Ethan," he corrected with a smile. "And you are?" "Siri," she whispered. "I'll leave when the storm passes. I do not wish to trouble you." "It's no trouble," he said. "You're safe here." For a long time, neither spoke. The storm screamed outside, and Ethan busied himself with his tools while she stared at the small book in her hands. It was old, its pages warped from moisture. When exhaustion finally claimed her, she fell asleep on the cot near the workbench. In the morning, she was gone. Ethan found the cot neatly folded and her book lying beside it. He called out into the empty workshop, but there was no answer. The storm had left the settlement coated in red dust, and her small footprints led toward the canteen. He picked up the book to keep it safe, meaning to return it later. But when he opened it, just to check if there was a name inside, his eyes caught on the first page. The writing was neat, looping, in a mix of Zelari glyphs and translated human words. And before he could stop himself, he began to read. "Today they laughed again. I dropped a tray, and everyone stared. The cook called me trash ears. I wish I could tell him I used to play the string harps of Sileran halls. But no one here would believe a slave could once make music." Ethan froze. His stomach twisted. He flipped through more pages, each one filled with tiny pieces of a life crumbling in silence. "Sometimes I hum when I sweep. The manager says it's noise. But the music in my head never stops. If I had one wish, it would be to see the Great Light Festival again. When I was little, the skies over Sileran were full of color. They said the lights danced with the music of our hearts. I wonder if they still do." Ethan closed the book, guilt burning in his chest. He shouldn't have read it. But he couldn't unsee the loneliness between those words. That night, he couldn't sleep. The rain outside reminded him of her words, the music in her head, the lights of her lost world. And slowly, an idea began to form. The next day, he went looking for her. He found her behind the canteen, scrubbing dishes in cold water. Her hands were raw, her clothes damp. "Siri," he called gently. She flinched, dropping a bowl. "Oh, Ethan. Forgive me, I didn't mean." "It's fine," he said quickly. "You left this in my workshop." He held up the little book. Her eyes widened, panic flashing in them. You didn't read it, did you? He hesitated, then nodded.
Yeah.
I did. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. But I'm glad I did. Her shoulders tensed. Why? Because it showed me who you are. Not what these people see. A worker, a refugee, but someone who still believes in something beautiful. She blinked, confused. You think my dreams are beautiful? I do, Ethan said softly. And I think I can help you see them again. It took a week. He traded every spare part, called in every favor he was owed. When the others laughed, what's the human tinkering with this time? He didn't answer. He worked through the nights, fingers blistered, welding and coding and wiring until his small workshop glowed with soft, pulsing light. Finally, one quiet evening, he knocked on the canteen door. Sairi, come with me. She followed, wary but curious. When he opened the workshop door, she froze. The room was dark except for hundreds of small drones floating near the ceiling, each one carrying a thin filament of colored plasma. Slowly, they began to move, tracing shimmering trails of green, violet, and gold. Ethan turned on a soft hum of sound, the notes rising and falling like breath. It's not perfect, he said, but I thought maybe it could be your light festival. Sairi pressed her hands to her mouth. Tears welled in her luminous eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. You made this? For me. He nodded. You wrote that you missed the lights that danced with music. I couldn't bring your world back, but maybe we can bring the feeling. The drones shifted again, syncing with the tones he'd programmed, a melody drawn from Zelari recordings he'd found buried in archives. Sairi took a trembling step forward, then another, and she began to sing. Her voice was unlike anything Ethan had ever heard, soft yet resonant, like the wind through glass. The drones responded to her tone, weaving faster, brighter, until the entire workshop glowed with living color. Ethan stood there, breath caught in his throat, watching her glow beneath the dancing light. For the first time since she'd arrived on Luma 4, she looked alive. When the song ended, she turned to him. I don't have words, she said, tears streaking her cheeks. You gave me back something I thought was lost forever. He smiled faintly. Maybe dreams don't die, Sairi. Maybe they just wait for someone to believe in them again. Word of the light room spread through the settlement. At first, people came to mock. Then they came to watch. By the third night, the canteen was empty. Everyone was at Ethan's workshop, listening as Sairi sang beneath a sky of glowing drones. Children clapped. Adults smiled. Even the gruff foreman from the canteen stood silently in the back, eyes glistening. After the show, he approached Ethan, rubbing the back of his neck. Didn't think the girl could do that, he muttered. She's something. She always was, Ethan said quietly. You just didn't look close enough. The next day, Sairi was offered a position at the colony's cultural center, singing, teaching Zelari music, helping preserve what was left of her people's art. For the first time in years, she had her own room, her own pay, her own voice. Weeks later, she visited Ethan at the workshop again. The drones still hung from the ceiling, now dormant. I came to give you this, she said, placing something in his hand. It was her diary, now closed with a silver clasp. I can't take this, he said. You must, she replied softly. It's part of your story now, too. He smiled. What'll you write in the next one? She looked toward the stars visible through the open hatch. Maybe about a human who read a poor alien girl's diary and gave her back her sky. That night, as the colony lights dimmed, Ethan sat outside his workshop, the diary resting on his lap. From the center of town, faint music drifted on the wind, Sairi's voice, soaring, full of life. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Dreams really are impossible until someone makes them come true." And far above, the drones blinked to life again, tiny, glowing echoes of a promise kept between two worlds.